cell phones, if you wouldn't mind putting them on vibrate or turning them off. And a reminder to speak into the microphones for us. And would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the first thing on the agenda is the Door County North Community Coordinator Report. Darcy, please.
I'm just going to hand out some packets here.
Good.
I don't know if you
Thank
all
you.
went to your own individual, but I should have.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, I should have enough.
Yeah, I think
I
she's
have
got enough
8,
there.
so. Ooh, phew, just enough. Oops, no, I have one extra. There we go. And then I'll also leave for you guys, and this, I just have one copy of each, but this is some advertising that we did with the Silent Sport, and that's the May and June editions, just so you have
Thank you.
a little reference. So, hello, my name's Darcy Pills. For those of you who don't know me, I think most of you do, but I'm the community coordinator for Door County North. And I'm just going to give you a quick recap of the last 7 months. So I've been on for a little over 7 months now. And then, just so you know, the packet is just for your information. It's got some of the things that I've done as far as the Uncorked Summer, which I'll talk about. Our brochure is in there. We have the Go Guide, and I tried to dog-ear the few. There's an article and a couple ads in there. And then there's a letter from our president and vice president, Thor Thorson and Mary Ellen Sisliak. And then just some information on a new event that we're having, which is a farm and market trolley tour, and a newsletter, and just some recaps. So you can keep that just for your reference. Okay, so some of the things that I've done in the past 7 months, I attended the Wisconsin Governor's Conference on Tourism, which was an amazing experience. I got to meet a lot of different people in the state and really got to talk about Door County North and what we want to do for this year. I also put together the Door County North brochure as far as getting the information from our members, working with our designer and our distributor, and getting those out into the entire county. As you see on the desk, I participated in a co-op with several other communities in Door County to do some advertising in the Silent Sports magazine, so that our name is out through those athletes. And then you have the Go Guide, which we have an article in there, as well as some ads for Door County North and also for Uncorked Summer, which was our big fundraiser this year. There's various press releases in there that I'll talk about a little later. And one really nice thing that I did this year was I partnered with TravelWisconsin.com, which is a website run through the state. And I was able to partner with them and put on a lot of our businesses that had zero presence there. And I was also able to, some businesses that already was on the website, I was able to add pictures and really update it and spruce it up so it was more interesting to browsers. Another thing that we did this year for Door County North is I partnered actually with Paul Schwengel and put together a request for donation. And we were awarded 4 brand new bikes for the free use of bike campaign from the Mills Fleet Farm. So that was a big win for us there. Another important responsibility that the community coordinator has is to interview, hire, train, and schedule employees for the information booth. This year we tried to add a few displays from some of our businesses so that when visitors come in, they'll be excited about what they see and we can send them to different areas. And we also are trying to be a little more customer oriented, so we can actually pick up the phone and make reservations for visitors who are looking for a dinner or a play. And we're also offering items for sale that say Door County North, so we have some hats and t-shirts and keychains. And we're also having a raffle this year. So if you go in, you can buy some raffle tickets and win a prize. So throughout the last 7 months, I also tried to attend as many Door County Visitor Bureau events as possible, including their tourism breakfast. There was an Ellison Bay Mixer Round Robin, which included the Clearing, Island Orchard Cider, the Turtle Ridge Gallery, Savory Spoon, the Bayview Resort, and the Wickman House. And I also had the opportunity to go on a photo shoot, so you might see me in some ads. But that was at the Clearing and also up in Gills Rock. The community coordinator tries to attend as many meetings as possible, from the Liberty Grove Town meetings, Door County North Board meetings. I have a lot of weekly committee meetings, and then there's also a monthly Door County Community Coordinator meeting. To inform members about what's going on in Door County North, I create a monthly newsletter, which is in the packet. You'll see the August edition, but it just gives the members an idea of what's happening in the area that they can use for themselves or for their guests. And then I also make regular Facebook postings that you'll see. And just a real add-on to that is a lot of sites will direct people to our Door County North site. And at Facebook will show us what sites have done that. And Travel Wisconsin popped up on mine. So that is making a difference to have your businesses on travelwisconsin.com. So some of the Door County North events, Uncork Summer was our big event this year. And I'll talk about that a little in a minute. But we also partnered with the Door County Maritime Museum, and we had some kids' activities up at the Gills Rock 4th of July celebration. And we also attended the Liberty Grove Historical Society Antique Tractor Show and manned a booth there where we talked about Door County North and sold some product. And then our next big event is going to be a farm and market trolley tour that will go throughout Liberty Grove. So back to Uncork. This was a real big thing for us. I'm sure most of you heard about it or even attended. But this was our big event for the year. This was the first time that Door County North applied for a GEM grant, which is a joint effort marketing grant for a first-time event. And it was the first time I ever wrote a request for a grant, so I was thrilled that they awarded us $10,000. So that was super exciting. But you do have some information about the grant that I thought you might want to take a look at. That's kind of the evaluation of what I did afterwards. Because these funds can't go to my salary or to any salaries, or, they can't just go to anything. It specifically had to go to out-of-area social internet advertising. So we had internet advertising in the Chicago area, the Wisconsin email, social media, and we had a lot of banner ads. And then we did have a few funds that were available to be used at press releases and some poster publicity. But that is a reimbursable grant, so we had to spend $10,000 in order to get it back, and I'm still waiting for the check to come back. That big real one I couldn't cash at Baylang. So that was a real fun thing for us. And then I just have a picture. Some of you guys were there, but the deputy secretary came and awarded us a check for that. And then just some of the advertising that we did that really talked about Uncork Summer Festival, but also Ellison Bay was our online, the Door County Visitor Bureau, Door County Today, 106.9, and then you can see the listed websites there. And then we also had our own website, uncorksummer.com. We did print publication as well. In the Peninsula Pulse, we were in the Key to the Door, and then we also had an insert in the Door County Advocate. We were in the Edible Door magazine, and I was pretty excited that we actually had an ad in the Green Bay Gazette Weekender edition. So we got a lot of visitors from the Green Bay and Appleton area, and then we put the insert in the Green Bay ad as well. And then we also did a few of the e-newsletters and some publicity. And one of the most exciting things, if you guys didn't see, is Ellison Bay was talked about on Channel 11 News. So we sent, the event was at the Wickman House grounds, so we sent one of the owners and one of the chefs to go. They were on Channel 11 the day before the event. They had 2 sessions where they got to talk and do demonstrations, and a lot of people heard about that. So, it really got out the Wickman House, it got out Ellison Bay, and it got out about Uncork Summer. We also did some advertising on the radio 106.9. Some of you may have heard our ads. But what I think is really great is that we were able to put our name out to the entire Wisconsin area, so throughout the entire state through the Wisconsin Public Radio. And then we also did some posters and postcards that you guys probably saw. So I know I'm talking about this a little bit much, but I think it really, really impacted our area, Ellison Bay, Liberty Grove, and even just Door County. We had almost 2,000 visitors to come up to Ellison Bay. So I was really excited about that. And then the next slide shows the impact that that had. And what we estimated was that there was about a little over 900 adults that were staying over 2 nights. We had about 50 that were renting. We had over 700 people who were day trippers, and we had approximately 150 local residents. And what that comes out to is over $220,000 that was spent in Door County. So I think that's pretty exciting. So some quotes from the visitors that I got, I just thought was amazing to hear these people say this, and these are actual quotes. The first one is, "I live in Sturgeon Bay and never had a reason to visit Ellison Bay. Now I'll be back every year. I've lived in Ellison Bay for over 25 years, and this is the best fest that's ever happened up here. Please keep it up. This is one class act, and I usually wait to come up to Door County until the 4th of July. Now I'm gonna start coming up a week earlier." So I think the Uncorked Summer increased Ellison Bay town awareness and helped visitors be aware of the beauty in the area on this part of the peninsula. And you can watch as Janet goes through some, if you guys weren't there, it was fun. It was just really a fabulous event, and everyone seemed happy about it. But I think it was a huge success for the reputation and awareness just of Liberty Grove and specifically Ellison Bay. I think everyone there had a really good time. So we tried to get a lot of Door County North people up there, but we also brought in, different restaurants. We had giveaways. We gave out goodie bags at the end that had coupons and flyers for customers to visit later during their visit or when they come back to Door County. So basically, I believe the Door County North Community Coordinator position is very important to the success of Door County North. The position will increase the awareness of the entire Liberty Grove community and will continue to partner with the different businesses and clubs to strengthen that. So I'm here today to please ask you to continue funding the Door County North Community Coordinator position. And just in closing, I'll let you guys read them. They are in your packet. But I got some really, really great quotes from some of the businesses in Door County North. So one is from Jim Robinson from the Shoreline Scenic Tours. He says, "I've been a member of the Top of the Thumb Association in Door County North for 38 years with 3 different businesses. With Door County North's new leadership in the hiring of Darcy Pills as community coordinator, I've seen more progressive, positive work done in the last 2 years than in the previous 38. I feel the association is on the path that will be beneficial to not only its business members, but its community as well." And then you'll see there's a few more. But that's all I have. So please consider refunding the Door County North Community Coordinator position. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, anybody?
If I might add, I did not attend Uncorked Summer because I was staffing the cider house and overwhelmed with the number of people who came in. And to a person, I have to say, to leverage on what you already quoted, there was not just, they were not just pleased, they were excited. To a person whom I asked them, how, whether they enjoyed Uncorked Summer, they were thrilled and excited about the event as well. And then, I want to be sensitive to the idea that anything I or others might say, affirming you might reflect on others, and I don't want that to happen. But I think that the energy that you bring, that you've brought and are bringing to the association and Door North is 180 degrees in the direction that I think, what I've understood, from the board's perspective, the board has been looking for, not to mention the members of the association as well. So congratulations.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, going on to reviewing the correspondence between a town citizen and the Door County Highway Department regarding the activity cost. Janet, you've handed out a number. There've been some questions, just for everybody's edification, there've been some questions that it might be more advantageous for the town to utilize the Door County Highway Department instead of our own town crew. And Janet and Bud have been doing a lot of research on this. We had a private town citizen contact John Coloci at the Door County Highway Department, and got some information from him, and we now have that information before us. It really comes down to the fact that it's a lot less expensive utilizing our own staff and our own equipment, plus the fact the county doesn't go out and plow until there's at least a 2-inch snowfall. Our guys were out on 1-inch snowfalls. It usually takes 2 days or more for the county to get to the roads in the town of Gibraltar. So those of us living on side roads and so forth might not see a plow for 2 days or more, possibly. Bottom line is that the county really, and correct me if I'm misstating this, Janet, the county really isn't interested. They don't have the equipment, they don't have the manpower. And that's not only for plowing, it's for doing the, they would not mow the cemeteries or parks. They would do the roads, but they do it at their convenience, and maybe once, possibly a summer or 2 times. So it appears, at least on all the information that we have before us, that while the idea is an interesting one to hire the county to do this, it's not practical from a financial standpoint, much less serving the community at large. Anybody else want to weigh in on it, please do.
I think there's one more factor. It's difficult to quantify, although I'm sure it could be quantified. Is the fact that the current crew live and spend their tax money and their money in Liberty Grove. I can't imagine there'd be too many people at the county level who live in Liberty Grove who are going to do that and be residents of Liberty Grove, as is the staff that we now have. And that alone, I think, adds a dimension that argues in favor of maintaining not just the economics of it, as you've already suggested, John, but maintaining the fact that the staff is, as small a number as that is, are residents of and live in Liberty Grove and spend their money here.
Anybody else want to?
Well, to support your position about the care that they would take and the expediency that things happen with it, especially with snow plowing and such on secondary roads, that's where a lot of the full-time winter residents live.
Yeah.
So that type of, access for emergency equipment and your own access and egress from your home is important.
We've got some figures out, if you don't mind, I'll share with those in attendance here. Highway cost comparison, snow plowing, now this is,
No,
no,
hold on a minute,
hold on a minute, okay.
hold on. What I handed to everybody is the sheet that you originally got,
This one?
that you were, no,
Oh, okay.
that's, I'm talking about
This one.
that one, right. That's the sheet you originally got. That's the sheet that was put out
You're right.
onto the website and everything. And the question that was presented to the county was, what is included in all the county numbers? And we didn't have, we weren't privy to that information until late last week. Included in the county numbers, they have depreciation, they have fuel costs, they have supply costs, they have small tool costs. They have all these costs, and this formula is actually made by the state of Wisconsin. That goes to the county, and they have to use the state number. I'm assuming that's so that they can bid out their jobs at a competitive rate. They include these numbers because their equipment has to be paid for through their hire out program. The county hires out their equipment, they do private work for people and are paid for it. We do not. So when the original figures were sent to you, Bud and I actually talked about this a little bit. Should we include depreciation? Should we include these numbers? And we decided not to, because our equipment is not for hire. We're not providing a number that is something that allows us to get our equipment paid back over a period of time. We buy our equipment and we use our equipment, but only for ourselves. So what I did was I went through and I also included depreciation, I included fuel, I included supplies, and I included repairs. And we have calculations that Bud had worked up prior to this for what it costs us to snowplow. I use those numbers. And if you will, take your form, cross out the number that you have there, and if this is what you want to do, and put in this new number that I'm going to give you. Irregardless, you're going to see it is still less expensive for the town to do the work. So, where we had $49,066.91, change that number to $113,647.94. Where we had $13,528, change that number to $20,581.26. I didn't change any of the paving. I didn't, but I will mention this. I talked to Jay and they've put all the gravel on Garrett Bay Road. We've calculated what it would cost us per yard to buy that gravel, from like Hockers. That would have cost us $16,000. And with the guys hauling from our own pit, and we added in truck costs, labor costs, insurance costs, we added it all in, it cost us $8,000. So on that road, that job, we saved $8,000. And then on the brushing, if you change the $1342.64, change that to $1387.50. And what that does, in my opinion, is it compares, I'm gonna say apples to apples, but it's really comparing a Cortland to a Granny Smith. It isn't the same apple to the same apple, but I have gone in and added in all these numbers now, and I will change this if that's what everybody wants to do, and put it back out there on the internet.
I think that the change, even though it isn't necessarily representative of how we do business, we don't do things like the county. But I think without the change, it leaves the town vulnerable to trying to fudge something by someone who wants to attack our, you know, what I'm saying. This is as close to apples as we can get, given the different operating procedures, but they're real numbers. unless you wanna, give the explanation that you gave as a preamble to changing the numbers and put both sets of numbers, but I think that'll be like, numbers overload.
No, cost comparisons as close as you can,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
come, should be noted in there that these are as close as we can compare cost to cost. Because otherwise, there is that opening in there between 118 and 49 is,
Yeah.
how could you do it that cheap?
Yeah.
There's also the depreciation, we don't really know how they figure depreciation. So we're figuring our depreciation and then adding it into ours, not knowing how they come with their numbers.
But you did add the depreciation in,
Yes. Yep.
even though you don't know the formula they used.
No, I did, yes.
Yeah, I agree, Nancy, I'm much more comfortable with something that's closer,
Sure.
and in numbers, this does support.
It adds in all the elements that they have added in theirs.
Yeah.
Whether it's a realistic, picture of what, the difference between how the county operates and how the town operates, but it doesn't add, it adds in all the elements.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. I think we might add to that too, that there's a cost there for paving for 1 mile. The county cost for Gibraltar was $125,500 per mile for asphalt. It was $129,000 for Bailey's Harbor. That's at 2.5 inches of asphalt. Our cost is $134,695, but we pave to 3 inches, which basically makes for a stronger road, I would imagine, and holds up much better.
And I can adjust their numbers to match ours, where if they were to pave 3
Right.
inches, Gibraltar would be 150,006. And Bailey's Harbor would be 154,800. If they were to pave 3 inches.
I think
I
it might
think
be good to add those
I
I
do
think,
too,
yeah,
yeah,
I
I
do
do
too.
too.
That's an apples to apples
Yep,
comparison.
yep.
I want to know who's the Granny Smith, though. Are we- Okay, any questions anybody else has on this?
Do we actually correspond with this individual directly with this information, or it's just on record and they can access it through the website?
It's on record, they can access it.
Okay. Now, I'm happy to forward the corrected sheet if
Well,
I
we'll
am
do-
instructed to.
Sure.
Sure,
Is
why
this
not?
something that's gonna be included in our mailing?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
We haven't been asked for this information.
No.
This is indirect through the county, who was asked to verify our figures, but they couldn't do that because they could only verify their figures.
So what about the portion of I call it the mailing, that has the highway comparisons?
That'll be changed.
Yeah, that's good.
That's perfect.
John, there's only one thing I'd like to add too. The 134,695 figure was, I believe, the figure taken from doing Garrett Bay Road? Or was that a figure you just got from Northeast Asphalt?
That's
recently?
Garrett Bay
That's
Road.
Garrett Bay Road.
Okay, very good, because that bid was requested late in the season. And late in the season, prices are usually higher because it's not coordinated with all the other roads that Northeast Asphalt has to do. I would guess from my experience watching this for the last 5.5 years that I figure for Northeast, if we'd put that bid in February or March, when they were planning their work, would be at least 10% less. So I think we're on very strong ground here.
Okay, any other questions anybody has? Any other comments, Janet?
No.
Okay, then let's go on to budget numbers, including but not limited to the highway, parks and property. costs to be wait list. Of course, as point out, once you be a year or two, it's so you don't know what they're. Okay. Take a look.
This is probably,
Okay, let me, again, for everybody, I'm sorry we don't have this for the, on
she's
this,
looking for it.
see if you can find it, put it on the screen.
Maybe in the meanwhile, John, you could explain for those who might not be as fully aware of what we were going through last year with the cap, with the projected, with the projections that Bud came up with, and
Yeah, I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with the levy cap situation in the state of Wisconsin. In 2005, the state imposed what they call a levy cap, and that limits the amount of, the percentage that the levy can go up in the following year. And they have a formula they put together to make it basically pretty simple to explain. As your indebtedness goes down, the levy cap follows it. So we have two bonds that were coming due in 2018. We've called one bond. That was the only one we could call. We are going to save about $40,000 in interest. Am I correct on that? Close to that.
35 to 40.
35 to 40. The other bond is not callable, so that'll be paid off in 2018. What happened last year is as our indebtedness began to go down, and there's one other aspect of this, new construction counts in your favor. So if you have a lot of new construction, it begins to offset your lowering your indebtedness. Needless to say, we don't have a lot of construction going on lately, so we didn't gain anything there. Through the discussion process last year on budgeting, we began to take a look, because we were getting some of these 5-year plans together. We were facing an approximately, now, it was approximate $400,000 shortfall for 2015. And you now see a revised finance board committee trying to figure out how we're going to go about this. And we've come to the conclusion that we need to go out and ask the community to allow us a levy override. And a levy override, we haven't set a figure on that at this point. What that does is that, and I'll use an example. I'll use $100,000 as an example. If that were to pass, the town then could, in 2015, go above their levy cap by $100,000. That's a continuing one, so in 2016, they could do that again. 2017, they could do that again. It's a continuing increase. That being said, I don't think we're looking at $100,000, to be honest with you. The other aspect on this has been, over the long period of time, we've been robbing Peter to pay Paul. And what has happened is that because the most expense for the town happens to be roads, highways, each year we take money out of the highways to put somewhere else, so that the roads now are, we've fallen way behind in that. Prior to 2005, and I think everybody here agrees, we'd have probably gone along with it as well, the town board intentionally kept the tax levy low to save town residents' taxes. It made sense. The levy cap, I don't know whether it came as a surprise, but I think it caught everybody off guard a little bit. And so what we've been trying to do is play catch-up. And we're finding we can't play catch-up anymore. Well, we can, but we looked last year, and I think Paul pointed it out here, that we were cutting the bonuses by what,
$35.
$35 last year, just to kind of get the budget in line, so. I'll let anybody else weigh in on this
Well,
one.
I would like to add to that, we're under like, it's like a double whammy. We have the cap, which has capped us at a very low tax rate, so we can't levy anymore. And as John said, every year when we did budgets, trying to keep under the cap, the easiest place to take money was from our highway budget, because that is a huge portion of the town budget. We have a lot of roads. The double whammy comes in where the state has had all municipalities in Wisconsin under this, you cannot exceed 5,000 per mile without going to the electorate. And so we are not unique in Liberty Grove in being in this double crunch with a state levy cap, and we can only spend 5,000 per mile on our roads. Roads deteriorate faster than that when you figure everything into them. It's not just repaving, it's not resurfacing, it's all of the things we had talked about with the loaded labor rate and depreciation and everything else. That's all part of it. Heat for the garage. All of these things factor into the highway budget. And so we have seen this coming for a couple of years and not known what to do, especially in recent political climate in Liberty Grove. And now we are all together trying to come up with what we need to do and how we can explain it so that it's understandable, so that the electorate who has to vote on this knows what we know, share our pain. And that's why we've been meeting within the last month, and that's why we're here tonight. And it's my understanding we will be sending out a communication to the electorate, trying to explain some of these things that they're pretty complicated sometimes. You know, when the levy goes down, the taxes go up, you know, what's gonna happen, and just even defining letting people know what is a mill rate, and what happens when it goes up or goes down, or what is a continuing override? Does that mean that we're gonna, you know, just lay it to the people every single year? We're trying to be as honest about, you know, the shape we're in and what we need to do to keep this town alive.
Right, the other part of the understanding is also that when people look at their tax bill, they look at their tax bill and immediately they look at the bottom line and think and it is their total tax, but it isn't the Liberty Grove portion of it. And that's a pretty small part of your total tax bill. It's important to all of us that live here and try to maintain it, but it isn't gonna go up a lot, but it is going to have to go up. But when you look at the total picture of your whole tax bill, that isn't, you know, a big part of it.
And I've heard on many occasions, both when I was sitting in the public section and then on this side of the podium, many examples of needs that go beyond just the fundamentals. A roof over somebody's head, so to speak, and food on the table, if you were gonna analogize this to a family. The vision included much bigger things. I've heard for example, more than several years ago, I think now, say downtown Ellison Bay looks worse than it did in the past. I know that the property task force that Nancy headed up last summer and was very widely representative talked in very positive terms about what we can do about getting property, not just as a place in downtown Ellison Bay for the visitor center and extra parking or facilities as well, but also, for example, to maybe look even further into the future and look at where we could put Ellison Bay and Northern and Liberty Grove on the map in a geotourist type of way with an interpretive center. But it's almost impossible to even suggest things like that when we're facing such a financial crunch. It almost seems irresponsible to even suggest that we go in those really positive areas. It'd be like a family who has virtually no food or shelter to say, well, let's go to Disney World. Let's just spend thousands on that. It doesn't sound practical. If you're analogizing it to a family, the town, as John suggested and as Nancy already said, we're looking to put a roof over our heads and get the basic stuff done, let alone look at the vision that we could have and that we've had expressed. And unfortunately, when the levy override last November was defeated, and we went back to the drawing board, a reconstituted finance committee, and got down to the point where, as Paul said, and John pointed out, we were getting to the point where we thought if we chopped $35 off of so-and-so's bonus, that maybe we could save a little money that way, and so forth and so on. A lot has been said those people who voted against the override, in part were just against higher, or the assumption of being higher taxes. Granted, that's a very legitimate thing. And some of it had to do with just retribution and suspicion. Quite frankly, there's a lack of trust on many people's part that somehow the town is still hiding the ball. It's not necessarily upfront about everything that it's doing from a financial point of view, whether it's roads or whatever else it might be. And I think in the last year, this committee and the board has made a really concerted effort. Janet, at one of the meetings subsequent to the defeat of the town board, of the levy override in November, said to the gathering at that point in time, tell me exactly what you want, in what format you want to see it, and I will give you every bit of information I can give you. Janet went through a huge project in restructuring the way the budget is set out so that it's very understandable to even a lay person who's not familiar with municipal finance, which, as Frank pointed out many times, is quite complicated, where is able to see from one exact specific category to the next what money has been budgeted and where we stand at that point in time. No one, to my knowledge, to this day, which is almost 9-10 months later, has come forth and said, well, I'd like to see this to be able to verify whatever the town is doing. So being an open book on the one hand, but not having cracked the cover and read on the other hand, are two separate things.
I'd like just to make a general comment. I've been here for 43 years and have been on the board for 5.5 years. Our town for the current year has an assessed value of about $1 billion, which is much more than Sturgeon Bay. We have 45 miles of shoreline, 101.5 miles of road. I think the crew of 4 and the office staff of 2 are extremely efficient. If you look at the figures of any other municipality, and particularly at the county level and the level of salaries that they pay there, you'll find we're way down, and we're delivering a lot. I think it's just common sense. If you own property, whether it's a private home, open land, or a business, that you want to have that property in an area that's well-maintained, has nice roads. And particularly if you're a local resident and you have to move around in the winter, our own snow service is magnificent. Our fellows were out 60 times last winter. We used more salt than we expected. We used a lot more sand than we expected. But I don't think there were any accidents or people couldn't get out of their homes. I don't know of anybody that couldn't get out of their homes when they needed to get out of their homes, or if there was a medical emergency or a fire, we could get there. We have a unique property. We have 45 miles of shoreline, and probably at our town lines, the peninsula is only, if you average out our town line, though it's a little bit screwy, we have a very piece of unique real estate in the entire state, if not this part of the country. We're not insular, I mean island like Washington Island, but for what we pay, 17.2% of your taxes goes to the town. And WTC gets more, they get 17.8% of your tax bill. Gibraltar School gets about 30 or 40% more, 23.9% of your taxes. And the county, that's the real big spender here, gets 39.3%. And what do we get from the county? We don't get very much. I figured it out a couple of years ago that 1 out of every $7 is paid to every county employee comes from the town of Liberty Grove. Are they spending 1/7 of their time and their effort for the town of Liberty Grove? No. So I think, and I've watched, as I said, for 43 years, I think we want to keep the value of our properties. We want to have a neat, clean town that functions and is efficient and is safe. I think public safety for fire and public safety for roads are extremely important to us. And having sat on the budget now 5 times in the last 5.5 years, I know we're going to come up with the absolute minimum amount to maintain what we've got. Previous boards and this board, when I came aboard, if they had to not exceed the levy, they just cut the amount of roads they were going to resurface. And that balanced the budget. It was an easy, simplistic thing, and that's the type of thinking that's been going on in this town for the last 30 or 40 years. And what it means is that we're now having to pay catch-up, and it's costing us an awful lot more to do it now and in the next 5 years than it would have been if we'd kept things in better order up till now. So these are just my general comments and feelings. Thank you.
Okay, let's,
Can I hand this off before we go?
sure.
I put together, got it done today finally. Take one and hand it down if you
Are you handing aspirin out with us too?
would. Well, maybe more than that. What I want you to look at here is the, a 4-year projection as best I could, getting ready for this meeting. And just using the headings of the various departments of the town that we work with. The first column includes the numbers that we have received this year from Parks and Property, from Highway, and from for our debt. The only things that are consistent going through 2018 are the debt numbers, and that'll be a little different too because with this callable bond, so that's going to be adjusted. If you look down, we got a total expenditure column of 2.9 million. Our receipts that we get without the tax levy is about 495,000. You look on the bottom now of the 2015 column, it's got those 2 expense numbers. our levy would be $2,423,000. Our levy limit from the formula is $1,672,000. That means at this point, calculating the numbers that have been forwarded and what we normally use every year for the rest of our expenses, we have an overage of $751,000. That goes down to the levy per thousand there without any override or excuse me, without any credits of $2.32 per thousand. The levy limit is $1.60. So our overage there is 72 cents. The levy in the past year, the current year, is $1.49 in your lower left-hand corner. So as we go through this, this is what the number we have to look at. And as we go forward in the next couple of years, you can see what happens with expenditures and revenues. So this is an overall look to keep in mind as we work through. Now, if we're going to go through line by line again, what we need to do is to hand out the long form, if you will, of this, which is 5 to 7 pages, showing each component of these main headings. And what I've done on top, before we've had public, see the fourth line down, is Public Works, the normal operating expenditures of, let's say, snow plowing, wages, fuel, electricity, insurance, and whatnot. And then right below that, so I keep those two numbers together, is the outlay for the highway, which is our paving and equipment purchases. So those two had been separated on the sheet in prior years, but now we got those, I put those two together so they can be looked at at the same time, and not have to be sought out elsewhere in the document. So this is the bottom line that we're looking at, and like I say, as we go through our next meeting or whatever, I can break it all down into and go line by line as we have before, and decide what we're going to do with each number, and if this 751,000 overage is too drastic of a number, to work with pulling that down or modifying it or making it more palatable.
I would think we probably want to go line by line.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So then for the next meeting, I'll pull this out and get all the components
Please.
together. I didn't want to do that today because I wanted to give you the overview first, because that 7-page document is pretty overwhelming when you first start looking at it. And then that document would not necessarily have the next 3 years. It'll have 2015, and then it'll show what we budgeted for 2014, what we expect to spend for 2014, and then how we can translate that up into 2015. And I'll try to get that out as quickly as possible, so you got some time to look at it before the next meeting.
And not to add fuel to the fire, and this has to do with the fire department, so there's no pun intended there. And it's not quite fair yet to discuss this, because it's only, the fire board meets on Monday, and needless to say, we haven't met. Frank, Nancy, and I are the Liberty Grove members of the fire board, and then obviously the two people who are the members of the Sister Bay portion of the fire board. But one of the things that Chief Hecht and I have been proposing is a lot, I would very much like feedback from the fellow Finance Committee members here tonight on a proposal that would prevent or more or less eliminate borrowing for capital expenses as they come up, like we did for the fire truck that had been on the burner now for 3 years, and Sister Bay had their portion of that fire truck money sitting in an account for as many years as it has been proposed, because they had the foresight to establish a capital expense fund that they funded. It is true that Sister Bay sometimes is tempted to go and take money out of that fund if other things come their way. But along those lines, what Chief Hecht has proposed, and what that the fire board will discuss on Monday, will be to have a fund for the next, that would fund capital. And Chief Hecht has extended out the capital needs, which are usually dictated by state requirements in terms of what standards you have to meet for fire trucks and brush trucks and other types of equipment. He has it very detailed, and the fire board will look at that on Monday. But if we were to start funding that in 2015, it would, the Liberty Grove portion of that for the next 20 years would be about $125,000 a year. Now, we would never have to borrow, but that sounds outrageous when we're thinking about $35 from one poor staff member's salary, bonus, I should say, to think, well, let's just take another $125,000 and start adding that every year so that we never have to borrow for at least that kind of capital expense. But and so we discussed, well, is it right to discuss that? I mean, it sounds frivolous. It sounds like, we're oblivious to the financial straits of the town. But I think we're not doing our jobs as representatives, as painful as that discussion might be, if we don't bring it up and say, you know what, this is a smarter way to not have to pay higher interest rates on capital loans, as opposed to putting that money aside little by little every year, letting it, invest it a little bit, obviously, make it liquid enough to be able to draw it when the need arises, and the chart is all there in terms of what is necessary by year, instead of doing it that way. It's the smarter thing to do, and if it's not our job to mention at least what the smarter thing to do is, whether it's more painful or not, it's our job to do it, I think.
To build a little bit on that, Lou, not only is it the smarter way to do things, because you do avoid the borrowing and the uncertainty of what the interest rates are going to be when that purchase comes up, by burying our heads in the sand and saying we're not ever gonna need another fire truck, or just not do it until we have to have a knee-jerk reaction and borrow and buy equipment or capital. The other thing that having a capital improvement plan that is affected is that you don't have this constant levy, paying off the debts and the levy imbalance going on. It keeps the budget much more even. You know where you're at. You don't have these peaks and valleys.
That's a great, exactly.
Another thing to keep in mind with this, what I handed out is, I don't have the library numbers, of course. I don't have the fire board numbers and some other numbers, so these numbers are gonna change as we go through this process, so.
And I was gonna ask, what Frank had mentioned, that 17.2% of the total tax bill that each taxpayer pays goes to Liberty Grove. Of that 17.2%, the library gets a share and the fire department gets a share. And I
Correct.
calculated that from the figures you have here, that the library gets 1.6% of what the town would get, and the fire department gets almost 13% of what the town gets. So the 17.2% that a taxpayer's money goes towards the town, a good, almost 14.5% of that doesn't even go to the town.
Right.
As opposed to the library and the joint fire department with Sister Bay.
Exactly.
It doesn't get added into immediate town operations.
Right, that's why it's not, is part of that then. But it comes out of the 17%, yeah.
And if it wasn't included in that, it would just be another line on your tax bill for, you know, whatever they needed to collect. That's what would happen. So it isn't like it would go away, it's represented in a different manner.
You know, maybe from a public relations standpoint, we ought to add the extra line, those extra 2 lines.
I was
thinking
that
too.
Yeah.
Then, but they have to become a taxing body.
Yeah.
It is,
Oh.
we can't change the tax bill, they have to become their own
you're right.
taxing body.
So this is.
No, in something like this, though, you have it laid out that way.
Yeah.
You can show it on your,
Yeah.
on your worksheet here like this, split
I
it
think we
out as
should
a
do that.
separate,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
separate,
what I mean, just
Yeah.
line
not
item.
on the tax bill, but just on the worksheet like
Right.
this to say that, because, I mean, at the November meeting, that defeated the levy override, a citizen got up and said, I pay 4,300 and change, he said, in taxes. And I just don't see where $4,300 of my taxes comes in services from the town of Liberty Grove.
What am I getting for my?
What am I getting? What services am I getting? His assumption was so erroneous in that he thought 100% of his tax bill went to the town of Liberty Grove, when in fact it's 17.2 less the other services that way as well.
That 17.2 actually could break down to a pretty interesting pie chart.
Yeah.
Definitely.
we've got that somewhere. I've got that broken out. And, the fire levy, department levy itself is up in the public safety, category there in line number 3. And that's grouped in with all the rest of the maintenance of the fire station up north and the ex-fire station in Ellison Bay. So, it's in there, but it's not real evident, when you look at the form.
Frank?
I'd like to speak to the fire commission situation. The figure that Bud just pointed out, the 254,135 is the expected budget. I think it's gonna be a little bit higher. Many of the things that the fire department gets in the way of a whole new set of oxygen masks for the entire crew come through grants and fundraising. The firemen themselves have fundraising projects, and they bring in thousands and thousands of dollars a year to pay for the equipment that they use. But also, I have to point out that the 254,135 does not include the cost of equipment in our share, because 2/3 of the calls are in the town of Liberty Grove for our joint fire operation with Sister Bay. Our cost of the trucks that we have to get just to keep going are 2/3 of that cost. A truck is $375,000, as is the case of the last one. We had to come up with $250,000. Sister Bay had the money sitting in the bank because every year they'd put in $50,000 for a bunch of years. So the previous boards here have not taken into consideration what they need to. As far as the library commission, it's a pretty steady thing there. The library commission committee has been holding down things. We have a very active bunch of volunteers that bring in money. We sell used books at Fall Festival. We do a lot of things. We also get grants for specific projects. Everybody wonders about the garden behind the library. That was a grant. It didn't cost the taxpayers 1 cent, and we have kept aside 1/3 of that money to help maintain that garden, so even the expense of maintaining the garden will not be a burden to the taxpayers. So in every case, the committees that our board members and I are on are doing everything they can possible to keep costs absolutely down and even. And when you consider inflation, we're doing better than that. It's amazing.
Okay. Next, it says consider levy override and the amount and information to the public.
Is this the format and what we're gonna send out? Or-
That is a draft.
That's
Yeah.
That's a draft. That is what we have come up with so far.
I know I need some time to kind of review it
Right.
and wordsmith it and just real quick, because I wasn't sure that I didn't mix this up. What's page one, what's page three? Or there's not?
The way it was handed to you, although you may have already,
Yeah, I probably did.
this is page one. It starts out with what is a mill rate.
Okay,
Page two has the pie chart.
yep,
Page three starts out the total tax bill mill rate.
okay.
And page
Got it.
Page 4 is the horizontal.
No.
Back of page three.
Oh, okay.
Page four has red lettering on it.
Okay, got it.
And all of that will be revised.
Yeah. that's gonna be-
Yep.
What, okay, I can't find it real quick, John, so we're not sticking it up on the thing, I can't find it real quick.
Okay.
What I'd like is feedback from this committee on this, spell check. My feelings are never hurt about, I don't like how this is worded. But when you do that, my opinion is it needs to be, when I typed all this, I pretended like I was talking to my 20-year-old.
Oh, thanks.
Who knows absolutely nothing about
Yeah,
this.
right.
And it's very hard to do that, but I think that's what needs to be done. Keep it as simple as possible.
Yes.
The chart that Bud had up here at the November meeting and subsequent to that, where Liberty Grove's tax rate and the other towns and municipalities, villages in Door County or Northern Door at least were put there, I think is very instructive. I mean, it's, the chart you have, which is the one on page one, shows what the mill rate is, but it's just Liberty Grove.
Yeah.
To me, the other one that Bud had is very telling, it seems. Because it really shows our mill rate
Compared.
in relation to the other, the most apples to apples comparisons.
Well, we can certainly replace a graph, a chart with a chart. And, I guess what I'm looking for is feedback on this to fine tune it. But this, in my opinion, needs to go out
Pretty
as
soon.
quickly as possible. Because really, this needs to be in people's hands as we're going through the next meetings coming up with line item.
Right.
They need to know this as we're doing line item.
Yeah, and that may
Understand
make
what's
them more
going on.
aware and they may show up.
Yes,
A cover letter is, and I
Yes.
don't consider a cover letter as just one more page. I think a short cover letter is critical to set what this is about. Because, this is good, but you get it and you're wondering,
yeah,
what do I?
and I know this needs a cover letter.
Yeah, yeah. And whether it comes from the board or whether it comes from you, John, I don't know, the finance committee, but, if you want me to draft one, I can. I have a background in doing that kind of stuff. I'd be glad to do that.
Sure.
Draft them
Then
and
I'll,
Draft away.
Send them to the town email and,
okay,
if maybe in the subject matter, put something like, something about mill rate mailing or,
okay.
so then we know that all
We
those
know what it
emails
is.
that come in that have that as a subject matter, those all are pertaining to this.
I know, did we discuss, for example, I thought we had discussed having sessions with
Yes.
as many groups. I know we were going to ask Door North, for example, if we could come and sort of present what this is as well to rally support. That's still in the offing?
It would be great to actually have, once this is finalized, in the cover letter saying, also saying when these meetings are, when and where they are, because we want to discuss what's in this letter. That would be an ideal. And I know we did talk about having different times of the day, different days of the week, even different locations. I don't know what locations are available to us, other than here, but.
Well, library for one,
Black,
library.
oh, the library.
We've got a lot more room here. We have a very
Yeah.
small room in the
And it
library.
might be,
Maybe 25 people max.
you know,
Well, we could do it here, but it would just have to be times when,
yeah.
no matter when you work, there's a time available. I would think we'd probably have to do maybe 4 meetings.
Well, I guess I would suggest at this point, until we get a little more information here, that the dollar figure for the levy override, we probably don't want to even look at this point.
Can't, can we?
Can't.
We-
You can't until you do the line,
Yeah.
until you do your budget. And Bud's preliminary numbers that he gave you is just to alert you that this is, this is what we're gonna kind of be looking at when we start going line item by line item.
All right, public input. Anybody have a comment?
Can we ask questions?
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Please.
Hold on a minute. This is being recorded,
Oh,
and
yeah.
unless you're standing at a microphone, nobody will hear you.
That's true.
You have to use pause if you need to.
First of all, I mean, just for my own curiosity, and I'm sorry I don't know this, but what percentage of the budget does go to road building, of our budget?
You get that off the top of your head?
I think it's 40%. I saw that number the other day, but
And what are the pressing needs for road building up here right now? I mean, what's the next big thing coming down the pike?
you're talking about an individual road or the whole?
Well, I mean, just the
whole
a
program?
budget hit. What's the next big costly road project to come along after Garrett Bay is done?
We have a truck to replace, we have a patrol truck and a pickup truck to replace. And we have to crush gravel next year. We skipped 2 years now. Paving, we have replacing that culvert, that stormwater culvert that goes from the Mobile down to, or from Ellison Bay Mobile down to the shore. That it will include paving of that area. For paving next year, we have a Scandia Road. We've transferred the trip money that we didn't use on Garrett Bay to Scandia, and Plateau, which is in bad shape, the 2 main roads for plowing for next year.
The reason I ask is, I mean, is it possible to back away from some of that? I mean, and the concern that I have, I totally understand where you guys are at with this levy cap. But I think trying to sell the public right now on voting themselves a levy override, I mean, I just don't know how you're gonna get the votes to do it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, my first concern is, how do you present that to people in a palatable way? Because what it comes down to is people saying, oh, I'm not gonna vote myself. In this political climate in the country, that seems like an impossibility. And especially if it's just business as usual. I mean, I think, and I'm not saying make people hurt, but I think if people do start to see that roads are suffering, infrastructure is suffering, we've got to do something about it. Maybe it's time to just step back in that part of the budget for a while. And it's just what popped into my head, but I wish you well. I mean, I really do. I hope, I hope you can get it done, but it just seems like a next to impossible task.
In these informative meetings that we're going to try to have, that's going to be explained, is, you know, if kind of, and I hate to make it sound like an ultimatum kind of a thing, but it's going to be, if this doesn't happen, then this is gonna happen. And
But you've got to get people to that meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, and based on a cover letter, I don't know what kind of cover letter is gonna compel somebody to feel that they wanna go to a meeting unless they're itching for a fight about raising taxes. I mean,
Good point.
I think our job, though, is to, whether people vote it down or not, hopefully they won't, is to have a really informed citizenry. And I don't know if they have been or not in the past, but, you know, we have to do a yeoman's job of saying, just spreading it all out and saying, this is what we have to work with. This is the outcome or the consequence, and go forward. I think we can get people to meetings. It may not be, we may not, you know, if we get 10% of our citizens to meetings, that would be horrendous. But certainly more than the group is here tonight. I mean, it's wonderful to see everyone here, but, you know, we've got to start spreading the word. And maybe the folks that come to the meetings will also spread the word to others and say, you know, you really ought to think about that. And, but at least the information that's being spread will be based on facts and not hearsay or guessing.
I have to say that this is the best attended finance committee meeting I've seen in 8 years on board. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you say too, Thor, in terms of the temptation of being able to just sort of push that road budget a little bit further. Keeping in mind though, again, something that so much of the expense for roads is really not repaving as much as it is the plowing and brush cutting and all the other things. And, I mean, I've learned as well that when you talk about the expense for roads, it's just that plow out there with a 2-inch more of snowfall 60 times, as Frank pointed out, this past winter alone, and the salary and the fuel that goes into that, that's what roads goes into. The paving part, the only thing we paved this year is that very controversial 1 mile of Garrett Bay Road. The whole thing needs to be repaved, but we got eked out, and the last levy, the cap that was put on the town by the state as to how many dollars you could spend per mile of road was overridden for $60-something thousand, I think we got, and added that to what little was left from the plowing and everything else that went on this winter to just do that 1 mile. But then one of the consequences of pushing the roads off, and Frank has brought this up many times, is that after a while, it doesn't mean resurfacing anymore, which is relatively inexpensive. It means reconstruction, which is phenomenally expensive. And so you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, it seems, by only postponing the inevitable and then maybe getting into something even deeper.
I totally get that. I'm just saying how you can make a case to a public that is not, it's not the message they want to hear.
No, it's not, and the roads are a big part of that, but just like Darcy's presentation tonight, asking for further support for economic development. If anybody drives down to Ellison Bay Harbor, they can just get out of their car, almost fall into the drink, and they'll know that needs an extreme amount of work. If everybody just focuses on the roads, that's one thing, but there's so many other parts of this budget that need adjustment to keep this whole place viable and keep it valuable.
Is there any way of getting around that levy cap? I mean, has that been appealed to the state, or is?
No.
Oh, yeah, there is.
There is
We can borrow the money.
Yeah.
borrow.
Board can just go out and borrow the money.
But that doesn't solve the problem long-term.
And Nancy pointed it out as well, though, when you read the literature that comes out regularly from the Wisconsin Towns Association, who represent the towns, not even the villages, but the towns, we are absolutely in the middle of that boat. Every town in Wisconsin is begging to figure out ways to get out of the levy cap, to get out from under the debt that they are forced to borrow as a result of the levy cap. And there are seminars on how to do it. They recommend at least don't borrow for roads, because that's a problem that only comes back to haunt you. You don't want to borrow for operating expenses, because that's another problem that you get yourself into. You know, when you do borrow for capital only. And this is rife, the literature is rife with that kind of advice, that we just say, yeah, we're not alone in this. I mean, it's been alluded to that we were the only town in Wisconsin that's mismanaged their money, but that is absolutely not the case at all. We are in a very, very large boat with Wisconsin towns that way.
I referred to the double whammy of not only the levy cap, but the 5,000 per mile. And fortunately, the Wisconsin Towns Association is working hard, lobbying the legislature to raise that 5,000 per mile. It's been on the books for more than 10 years. And to raise that to 10,000 per mile, because virtually every town that has roads to maintain that's their biggest struggle. We can't keep them up at 5,000 a mile, we're falling behind.
We need to quit calling it roads.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
highway
need to
budget,
quit calling it roads and start calling it public works.
Public
okay,
works.
public works.
Because that encompasses all those different categories, and when you just say $5,000 per mile for roads, that's
Yeah,
not
'cause
it.
they-
Already know I've been behind using as much steam reason from a tourist pack that comes to town. We, was it $60,000 a year or $60,000? $60,000. There are no to what the town can do. Most municipalities, not all of them, put that money right in the general fund and use it for their regular expenses. Put hearts and some money to put some of that into things. And I think, anyway, I will speak to the other board member. I think part of that money also goes to maintaining our. Another thing that, for keeping the town nice, the tourism's come and visit our stores, restaurants, and stay here. Friendship. Get over. That's me, too. Complain about people, you know, your yourselves and your.
I mean, that's true, but in reality, you don't get a lot of voters that Liberty Grove come, you know, that opportunity on much of the level.
Yeah, I have one philosophical thought on this. If we put off the responsibility that we've got, it burns generations with it. And I truly think we have a responsibility to step up and play in the community. The second part of this is if I get cut, the cuts now if we're closing it impacts on the tourism industry. It'll impact big time. If, and I'm sure you could say, that's one of the options of closing the lot of use the park. If we, if you close down and attract tourists to the area, a bigger picture of that, if the town becomes less desirable to live in, we are not going to keep any families, we are not going to attract families. And that that just begins to multiply the problems that we're going to face in the future. Maybe that's a dire way to look at it, but I have a great fear that this community is maybe tipping in the wrong direction, unfortunately, so.
Well, I think that levy cap with the 2005 numbers is the culprit.
Oh, well,
Yeah, absolutely.
And what needs to happen is, it needs to go through Madison, but how is that ever gonna happen?
Never gonna
well,
happen.
that's not, no.
And the big thing that I mentioned once before is, if this town looks ragged, there's trash, we don't trim our highways, we don't trim our trees, our property values are gonna go down. And if at some point you have to sell a business or sell a home or something, you're gonna get a lot less for it. And that's already happening in my mind. There are many, many properties for sale, second homes. And I think a lot more would be for sale if people felt as though they could get what they feel as though they're really worth. So property values, I think, is maybe the pivotal thing for people that live here year-round to think about. A little bit more now keeps your property values.
Your cover letter may be 2 or 3 pages.
Are we going to shoot for a date for mailing then? So we kind of know what to aim for here?
We also need to identify the days, times and dates of the town meetings too, or the information meetings.
Well, it's anybody else in public input, I'm sorry, we're,
Oh,
Go
I would
ahead.
like to say that, the election came up, and I forgot about
Can
it.
you come up and,
yeah,
But somebody called me up and said, don't forget to vote. And so I went and voted, because I forgot, it's August, you know? So maybe, Paulette had a. I
good
mean,
thought.
if Frank had called me to tell me about this budget meeting, one of these meetings, I know Frank, I'd go, it might be my opportunity to go and find something out. Maybe that's a really good solution to getting people to these meetings, because, I don't know, I get a ton of mail, and I look at it and I go, I'm so busy, but I wasn't personally asked, you know? I'm just suggesting that as a solution.
Good thought.
And this is really kind for our community coordinator to be funded for the entire 20,000 out of the tax money, but that leaves you with 40 or 50 more. So I just hope that you'll consider that, because I think it'd be very difficult to keep somebody for 14. So as a Door County North Vice President, that's what I just that's all I can say.
Thank you. If the economic impact figures that were presented, it's, at this point, pretty good. Yes. Any other?
How many days are we have from
We need 2 meetings. Pretty quick. Do it today. Like, one time, you know,
Commission might have to go by the board on the 27th.
26th, you'll be going then, right? That evening?
No, Melanie's gonna work for me on Tuesday.
About 26th,
That's a Tuesday?
It's okay.
for what time? 5 o'clock?
Well, it's gonna take a longer meeting, isn't it? Yeah.
Better make it 7.
No, I don't wanna be here till 11.
Yeah.
You were last time.
If we start at 5, bring dinner.
Can't be.
Whoa,
at 5.
can't believe it.
6.
What time can you be here?
But without me,
It's better than 7.
And this would be finance.
yeah,
Wouldn't be board, this would be finance.
right.
On the 26th, good. Gotta make doctors. Get up,
You get back.
here by 6, yeah, not 5.
I think what we should do is all get put on this, at least
If you can get it to me,
and just do it to get all.
if when this work is to
We'll have final that 26th, or we have
Just to be.
see the finance. We'll have the final, we're gonna have to do the
Yeah.
what the
we don't have a board that Wednesday. For the informational. I think it's easier with this group or bigger, but you put 400 people in the room,
Yeah, you won't.
We don't- we won't
get anything
No.
done.
Yeah.
no.
You won't get them, number one.
So,
Do we wanna put some kind of a ad in the paper announcing this?
I
That'd be
think
great.
so, yeah.
Okay.
Super. I kinda like the whole idea of phone calling, I just don't know how
Yeah.
we do it. You know, I don't know if you're stuffing volunteers or calling volunteers, or even where we get the phone lines, really, it'd be pretty tough. I like it. The idea is nice.
Maybe we get somebody to
it's
do a
nice, but I don't know how
computer-generated.
you would execute that.
Yeah, I don't either.
Okay, anything else?
Eddie Allen?
How many volunteers do you think you could get? And how many times, could each volunteer call 50 people? Or 30 people? And make it, and have a sort of an outline of what they would say? I know phone calling works, I've done it. But I'm not gonna call 800 people myself. I
Oh,
can't.
shucks.
Where do we get numbers, though? That's the kind of thing it matters.
Phone numbers?
Yeah, with
You
so
have
many people,
addresses,
Well,
We don't have phone numbers, we only have addresses.
then I don't know.
So the only avenue of phone numbers for people that are here is just to use the phone book. And as we all know, the phone book doesn't have cell phone, so you're.
Well, at least it's a start. I mean, I know there are a lot of
It would-
phones in the phone book.
It would be
phone
a
numbers.
start.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love it if somebody would think about this, and maybe at our next meeting.
Because a personal call like that makes people, it'll bring them in, because a lot of people throw their mail out, or in the Pulse, a short little blurb on it, so it's a repetitive thing to them. Repetitive stuff works.
Yeah.
It puts it on the calendar and it makes them come, and then that person talks to the neighbor talks to the next neighbor, and it's like a domino thing. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
How about 500 people? Yeah. Okay, anything else? Our next board meeting is going to be next Wednesday at 3 o'clock following the board review, instead of next Wednesday night. It just made more sense to, as long as we're here, to stay here, so. Okay, thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
So you've changed the meeting